We're here in San Antonio, Texas, at the very heart of what we call San Pedro Park. And some very interesting history that you're looking at here, folks, both in prehistoric times as well as in historic times, and we'll tell you what that is. But first of all, let's read this plaque here at San Pedro Park. It says, San Pedro Park, 1729, the second oldest municipal park in the United States, declared public land in 1729 by King Philip V of Spain. Today the park comprises an area of 46.004 acres. San Pedro Springs, 1709. Known by Indian tribes before that date on April 13, 1709, named San Pedro Springs by Father Olivares and Father Espinosa on an expedition in Spanish Texas. So we can see here it was the Rose Window of San Jose chapter, National Society Daughters of the American Colonists, was put up in 1979. So you're at a very historic place because this is actually the place where the Spaniards actually founded San Antonio. So this is the actual original site of the city known now as San Antonio. It was called San Antonio de Vallejo back then, of course. And these were the springs that had been occupied since prehistoric times. And we'll give you an example. There have been archaeological diggings here on this site of the springs, which are at about the 663-foot elevation, where they just bubble right up from the limestone. And we can see that it's one of the most important places in the history of the United States, because they have found bones of mastodons, giant tigers, dire wolves, and Colombian elephants right here on this site that you're looking at. Now remember, this is 46 acres that we're overseeing or overlooking, just to kind of give you some general viewpoints as we pan around so you can see. Of course, it looks somewhat different than it did back when it was discovered by the Spaniards. But this was where the city of San Antonio was actually founded, right here on these springs. And they found a group of Indians called the Payaya Indians, and they called their village Yanaguana. And so the name kind of stuck to these springs, Yanaguana, and the San Antonio River also. But of course the Spanish named it after St. Peter. We call it San Pedro. But this is what you're looking at, folks. And the city of San Antonio was founded right here originally. This is the actual location of the San Antonio city. And of course, the city itself now, the modern day city, is about 1.6 miles northwest from here. So we're not that far from modern day San Antonio, but this is the actual site of the original founding of San Antonio. Now over here you have the pool. We're going to show you a pool. So remember, this is the second oldest park. Well, you might say, well, what is the oldest park in the United States? Well, that would be Boston Common, found in Boston, Massachusetts. But this is the second oldest one, and incidentally is the oldest park in Texas, the state of Texas. There you can see the springs bubbling forth right into the pool. Now also some interesting things that have happened here over the years. Back when the state of Texas was considering seceding from the Union, when the Confederacy of the United States was formed, it's interesting that Sam Houston, who used to be the president of the Republic of Texas prior to it becoming a state in the Union, which by 1860 was a state in the Union, of course, he was against the secessionist movement, and so he came here to this area and gave an impassioned plea to his fellow Texans to not secede from the Union. Of course, they fell on deaf ears because Texas did join the Confederacy, and of course the rest is history. Texas, along with the other states in the southern frontier of the United States, lost that war, and thus ended slavery, an institution that had been part and parcel of this nation, and even before times, before there was a United States. But this gives you a good idea of what you're looking at here in San Pedro Park. Look at some of these old trees, old oak trees. Isn't that beautiful? Very stately. So there's a lot of history here that goes to even prehistoric times, when these animals roamed and drank water right here from the spring. And then of course many Indian tribes would stop over here, and of course this was all part of Comancheria, which stretched up into Kansas and Nebraska, parts of Nebraska, Oklahoma, and of course Texas. So we wanted you to take a good look at this actual site of the founding of San Antonio, where it all started. It all started right here. Of course, it looks different today than it was back then because of the construction that they've done to it. So it doesn't look quite the same in terms of the formation, but you can see the older part, which has been left intact right around here, this part here. Pretty much the same as it was back then. These limestone cliffs, if you will, outcroppings. That gives you a little idea of some of the original way it looked. Of course, the wall was not there behind it. That gives you a good idea. So if you ever come down to San Antonio, Texas, Bexar County, be sure that you stop in here at the San Pedro Park, because again, this is where the city of San Antonio actually started, and they actually founded the Alamo's first home was right here on this location. And then later on, of course, it was moved 1.6 miles northwest of here to its present day location. And of course, everybody's familiar with the Battle of the Alamo, and which took place much later in history, because this was Spanish Texas back in the 1700s when the city was founded. Then it became part of Mexico when they gained their independence from the Spanish back around 1821, 1824, somewhere in that neighborhood. But again, coming to you from San Pedro Park, we'll leave you with this last magnificent view of the pool. San Pedro Park, established 1729. San Antonio founded in 1719.